All right. Well, I was going to end the series with the last episode, but we still have some bugginess uh, happening here. So consider this a bonus episode. We're going to create a debug menu and a debug manager because just relying on the game itself to give us the power-ups we need to debug this is not working. It's being really time consuming. So let's go ahead and create a debug menu here. So let's start off with a control, and we'll call this debug menu. Go ahead and save that in source scenes UI menus. And let's anchor this in the top right corner. Let's create a panel container. And inside that, let's create a margin container. And let's give that 4 pixel margins. And inside here, let's create a VBox container. And let's add a label to that. So this will be the version label. And this will be version 0.1.0. So the way that version control works is this number here is going to be your patch number. This middle number here is going to be your minor release number, and this number here is your major release number. So let's say, we just make a small patch change. We're going to increase this number. We're going to keep increasing this number with each little small patch change. Once we reach a number of patches that we feel constitutes a minor release, we're going to increment this number here, which would be our minor release number. And then when we feel like we're making major changes that might break save files or just really changes up the game itself, or you go to like full release, this is when you change this major release number here. So all projects when you're starting out will be version 0.1.0. That would be your base version. At this point, if we had been keeping control of or keeping track of our version number throughout this entire thing, we'd probably be on version like 0.3.3 or something like that. But I'm just starting out the version number now, so this would be your base version number, 0.1.0. When you go to full release, it'd be 1.0.0. Yeah, so let's start out at version 0.1.0, which is our base version. Let's and sometimes on the version 2 they have like a number on the end here, like whatever. That would be your build number. So it'd be like this, or it'd be like build whatever. Sometimes they include the build on the end. So if you see like 0.1.0 and then like a bunch of numbers, that would be the build number on the end. Or maybe it's a bunch of numbers like this. That would be the build. How many times they built the project. But we won't include the build number here. So let's add a button in here. This will be the split paddle button. So we'll say split paddle here. Let's duplicate that a couple times. We'll have our magnet paddle button. And we'll have a large paddle button. And then down here we'll have a big ball button. So I saw some wonkiness going on with big balls. So we want to be able to call those, create a big ball as well. So this will be magnet paddle, large paddle, and big ball. So let's select all of those and give them a font here. We'll give them monospec or monospace. Drop that in right here. We'll do a font size of 8. And on the version, we'll give that the same font size of 8 with monospec. And on our VBox container, I want to get rid of the separation here a little bit. So let's bump down the separation down to just 1 pixel. There we go. So it's nice and small in the corner here. And that's actually off the screen. That's not going to show up. So let's come back to this and anchor preset. We'll do full rect. And then on the panel container, we will put its anchor in the corner here. There we go. So now it's actually in the screen. So let's add a script to this. Let's connect to the pressed signal on all these buttons. And now you don't want to tie your UI to any sort of logic, game logic, or have it hold data or anything like that. So keeping with that convention, we're going to separate the logic of the debugging from the actual UI, the debug menu UI itself. So let's create a script here under auto loads, and this will be the debug manager. So let's go ahead and add that debug manager to our auto load globals. And in here, we want to hold a couple onReady vars to the ball. And to the paddle. Do we have a class name on the ball? We do. So we can just call this ball. Just initialize those to null. So on our main script here, we're actually setting the game manager's ball parent to the scene instance. But since we're setting so many things, we might as well have a script on the game scene itself. So let's create a script there, and let's come into the ready function. And this is where we will set all of these kind of things that we want to find on the game itself. So let's come to the main script, and we'll get rid of that reference there, and instead we will set the game manager.balls parent here on the ball on the game scene itself. So the balls parent is get node balls, and then the debug manager.ball is equal to get node balls/ball, and the debug manager.paddle is equal to get node paddle. So all of those are set. Let's have a couple of functions in here. Let's have toggle big ball. So we'll say if ball dot is big ball dot, now this is kind of bad practice because we have an underscore in front of this function name, but I'm not going to bother going through and fixing those. It's okay. So is big ball and big ball function. So we need to actually break that out in our ball script itself. So here let's have is big ball is a bool, was false, and we can move that up here with the multi-ball. And let's come down to where we're creating big balls. So here's where we create the big balls. So let's cut that out here, and we will just call big ball function here, and let's create that big ball function up top. Can do that right here. Function big ball. And we'll just paste that in here. And to get rid of a whole line of tabs, you do Shift Tab, and then I'll get rid of a tab on there. And I noticed that we have a public function here, but it's not at the top of the script. So typically you want all of your public functions at the top, all your private functions below that. And above your public functions, you want your built-in Godot functions. So it's built-in Godot functions, then your public functions, then your private functions. Okay, so that'll be able to spawn us a big ball when we want. Let's create a couple more functions in here. Let's have toggle split paddle. So if paddle.isSplit, we'll say paddle.onSplit timer timeout, else paddle.split. So let's make sure we go into our paddle script here and make sure that these are publicly facing variables and functions. So let's come to paddle. Up at the top here, we have isLarge and isSplit as private. We want these public now. So let's select this and hit Control D to find all the instances of those. And we can rename all of them all at once. So let's say isSplit as a public function, and same with isLarge. We're going to need this to be publicly facing as well. So hitting Control D a bunch of times to select all of them, and then isLarge. And let's come down to our split function. This is now a publicly facing function. So let's make that public and then cut it out of here and then put it at the top of the script. And then same with our large. When we become large, let's cut this out here. And we'll just say large. And then let's create a new function here. That we can call from outside of this script. Okay, so let's come back to our debug manager, and now we can create a split paddle whenever we want. Let's do toggle large paddle. Say if paddle.isLarge, paddle.onLarge timer timeout, else paddle.large. And this is really bugging me, but I don't want to go through the hassle of fixing all those signals. Okay, and then we need one more toggle magnet paddle. So we'll say if paddle.isMagnet, then we'll do paddle.onMagnet timer timeout, else paddle.magnet. And let's go into our paddle script and break out that magnet codes here. So here it is. Let's cut this out. We'll just say magnet. And at the top here, we'll add a function magnet. There we go. And I'll just add if isMagnet is already true, We don't need to do this stuff. We'll just restart the timer. If magnet is false, we need to do, if magnet is false, then we do this. Otherwise, we don't need to. Okay. And we can probably do the same thing with the split. We'll say if is split is false, then we'll do all this stuff. Including this. Otherwise, we'll just reset the timer on that. Okay. So coming back to our debug manager, this we have all these functions now. We can come to our debug menu now and call these. So on split paddle button press, we'll call debug manager dot toggle split paddle, debug manager dot toggle magnet paddle, debug manager dot toggle large paddle, and debug manager dot toggle big ball. Okay, let's turn visibility off on the debug manager to start. And actually, we need one more function in here. Let's have function unhandled input. And let's come into our project settings input map here and say debug menu. Add that and add a key to that. I'll make it the tilde. So we'll say if event.isActionPressed debug menu, then we will toggle the debug menu. So if visible is true, then we'll say visible equals false, else visible equals true. All right, let's come to our game and open up our UI scene here. And let's add that debug menu on there. Save that. And let's test this out. So hitting tilde, now we have a debug menu here. And now we can more easily check what's going on with our split paddles and our large paddles and our magnets and all that. So let's hit large paddle and we're not off the screen. That's good. I want to make this, and I don't have, I can't click any buttons, and that's because our debug menu, we have it covering the full screen. And it's blocking our inputs. So let's come to our debug menu here and our panel container control. Yeah, it's taking up the whole screen here. So we need to make sure that we take that mouse filter to ignore, so that it doesn't block our input. Now we can turn visibility back off. So let's make sure we're in windowed mode here. All right, let's turn our debug menu on. Can we still click things now? Okay, we can. All right. So large paddle, it's not pushing us off the edge of the screen when we go large paddle. And same on this side, but that offset is not right. It's pushing us too far. When we go split paddle on the edge of the screen, that's okay. We go split paddle on this side, that's okay. If we go large and then split paddle, that's messing us up. So that's what I was noticing. If we're large and we go split paddle, it's actually pushing us out of bounds still. So let's go to the script for the paddle here. And, excuse me. So where are we checking that? We're checking out of bounds. We're checking out of bounds here, and this is not good enough. So I don't know how long I've been going for. At least an hour or so to debug this, so that you guys don't have to sit here and watch me debug this. But I've just been messing around with this, trying to figure out what's going wrong, using a lot of print statements to see what our collision shape 2d.extents.x is returning, what our position is, and what if this if statement is firing or not. And so what I found out is we need a couple more checks in here and a couple more conditions. So at the top here, we're going to have a split gap size as a float, and we're going to have a collision shape extent x here. So if is large, then our collision shape extents x needs to be times by 2. So let's take this and times it by 2. Because for some reason, just through doing print statements here, I noticed that this was always returning 24, which if we look at our collision shape right here, we can see the size is 48, so the extents would be half of that, which would be 24. And even when we were large, for some reason, this was still returning 24. And that's probably because it doesn't take scale into account when we weren't changing the actual physical size of it, we were just changing its scale. So its size was always returning 24, even when its scale was times 2. So if we're large, we need this number to be doubled here. So let's go ahead and use that in all these places. Instead of the actual shape extents.x, we will have our own variable here where we double it if necessary. And now that I'm thinking about this, this is probably, we probably don't want to scale. We probably don't want to be scaling this, because it's gonna, I also noticed that when is ceiling hit was the case, that this was messing up as well. So instead of doing scale here, we probably want to be affecting this size directly. You know what, I'll just fix it like this for now. You guys can know that that's the issue. There's still an issue with is ceiling hit and scaling these colliders instead of changing the size directly. So to get a more solid fix, we want to be actually just changing the size of these colliders directly instead of scaling the whole thing. But because I don't want to debug that on the fly here, I'll just stick with how I fix this this way. So so check out of bounds. We need that. Also the split gap size, because we're changing the scale, is actually also doubling the split gap size as well. So that would fix it. If we didn't use scale, that would fix the split gap size issue here as well. But I'll stick with this fix for now. So else we don't want to double these. And then here we want to use split gap size here instead of split gap itself. And that will fix all of our out of bounds issues. Except for when ceiling is hit. I didn't think about that. Yeah, but basically this using scale to do the is ceiling hit and the scale to do the paddle size, the large size here, that's actually giving us a lot of problems. So if I was to re-implement this, I would set the size of this collider manually instead of just changing the scale on a whole. I wish I had thought about that before I started recording this video, but you know, it's a little bonus activity you guys can do. You can change this from using scale to changing the size of the collision shape, the shape itself directly. So that should fix all of our out of bounds issues that we were having. So we're large. Now that didn't fix it. Why are we getting pushed so far out? It was working on my other project. This shouldn't be pushing us out like that. So let me see what I changed here. First of all, this number as well, it was returning a number like it was returning a number like this. It was like 24.000. It had a, you know, it had a floating point on the end. So to get rid of that floating point, we want to round this position here and round this position here, because that was potentially messing up our math. Also, we want to be less than or equal to and greater than or equal to here. But let's see, why is this not working? Oh, okay, it's because we need one more check in here. We say if is split is false, then our split gap size is equal to 0.0. So that way this one check out of bounds function will work for when we split. We can do check out of bounds, and when we're large, we can also call check out of bounds, and it won't affect us. So let's try that out. All right, so we're large and we're okay, that works. We're on the edge and we're large on this side, and it, okay, that's working. So now let's go large and split on the edge, and there we go. And large and split on the edge, and now we're not getting stuck on the outside of the map. And even if we're small and we split, that was working too. Small and split, we're not getting stuck on the outside. And small and split, we're not getting stuck on the outside. So another thing I noticed is that the balls, when they're stuck to the paddle, they're actually floating above the paddle. And it's even worse when they're a big ball. They're actually like stuck in the paddle a little bit. So to fix that, we need to be a little more careful about just using magic numbers in all these places here. So for our stick to paddle here, let's bump this up to the top, and we actually need to be a little more careful on how we're doing our offset Y here. So let's do a var offset Y as a float, and we'll start that off at -8, which is normal. We'll say if is big ball, then our offset Y should be equal to 12.0, because our ball is twice as big, so we need to add -4 onto that. And then this stick offset here is going to be equal to a vector 2 of global position.x and the paddles position.x, and then the offset Y on the Y. And so that'll fix our offset. This offset here, we're always going to be a small ball, so the offset's always going to be 8 on the Y there. But we needed to fix this in the stick to paddle function here. Also, in the game manager on these on move magnet ball and on move magnet ball split timer timeouts, these positions weren't working out. They were not moving the ball correctly. So let me show you what I mean. So let's release the ball. If we're a magnet paddle and we're like this, but when we split, we're automatically releasing it. But let's grab the ball as a split paddle, and then we come back, and the ball should stay in the same position on the left paddle. So let's do that, and it does. So that's correct. So that's fine. I'm hitting spacebar, and it's calling these... it's hitting the button, so I don't want that. So let me go to project settings, input map, do show built-in actions, and this actually UI accept. Spacebar is set to UI accept. So once we first click on that button, it's actually grabbed focus. So every time we hit spacebar, it's actually hitting that button for us, and I don't want that. So I'm just going to delete this spacebar on UI accept on the input map to get rid of that. But let's release the ball, become a split magnet paddle. So, and then we can split back, and that's keeping its position right where I want it when it comes back. But if we split and we come on this side, you can see for one, the big ball is stuck into the paddle. And then if we, so we should be at this position on when we come back to a normal paddle, and let's come back and look, it's not. It should be right here. It should have stayed right where it was, and it's over here. So that's an issue. And that's an issue with these two functions here. So the way I fixed this is we need a couple checks up here. So we need that split gap size. So we're in on move magnet ball on split timeout. So we need the split gap size here. And that's equal to paddle dot split gap. And then var ball offset y as a float, set that to 0.0. So if paddle dot is large, then the split gap size is actually double. So we need to take our split gap size and double it. And if you go ahead and fix the scaling issue with our paddle to not use scale, to actually use the to just change the collider size and the sprite size, this won't be an issue anymore, but we're not doing it like that. So let's come in here and we'll say if ball dot is big ball, then our ball offset y needs to be -12, not -8. So up here, let's set it to -8 initially, but if the ball is a big ball, then we will turn it to 12. And instead of using a magic number here, we're just gonna use this ball offset, and then the split gap size here will be this split gap size replacement for this. So that's going to fix all of our wonky issues with magnet paddles and having the paddle be large or having the ball be large. And we also need to do the same thing to the large for this as well. So let's do ball offset y, so float, equals -8.0. But if ball dot is big ball, then that ball offset y needs to be -12.0. And here we will use that right here. So that fixes most of our problems. If we come in here and we're a magnet split paddle, so magnet split paddle. Let's get on the right paddle here. Now the ball should be on this side of the paddle when we come back, and there it is, staying right where it should be. Also the offset, the ball is touching right perfectly on the paddle. So let's also become a big ball here, and we can see now the ball, well, that shouldn't have happened like that. Why are we in the collider here? Magnet paddle, and we're sticking in. So I think the reason for that is we're just not calling is big ball. We created is big ball here, but we don't actually, yeah, we're not actually calling, we're not setting big ball equals true here. And then on big ball timer timeout, we need to set is big ball equal to false. Because we created that flag, we were just never setting it. Okay. So here we go. Let's become a magnet paddle, big ball, and there we go. So now the big ball is not stuck in the collider. So let's become large, and let's grab the ball, and then let's become small. Boom. Still stays on the paddle. It's perfect. We can be a split large paddle, and then we can unsplit, and the ball stays where it was. Now I also noticed when the big ball timer timed out, its stick offset wasn't fixed. So that's actually an easy fix, I believe. When the big ball times out, we can take our stick offset and set it to a vector 2 of our stick offset.x and -8.0. That should fix that. So let's go ahead and test that out. All right, let's become a magnet paddle, grab a big ball, and now let's turn big ball off, and there we go. Now it's sticking to it. See, just having a debug menu and being able to test these things really fast, you can make, you can fix little debug errors like that really quickly. So I think we're still having errors when you can see the ball is like kind of moving a little bit when we're becoming big and large and small paddle. I don't think that's enough of an issue to really fix, but what the really big issue was that we're still having is when the ceiling is hit and now we become a split paddle, you can see the positioning's off. And now two balls are stuck like that. That's weird. Those two balls are just stuck. I haven't seen that bug. So there's definitely still some bugginess when the ceiling is hit and trying to move those balls around. So I'd say 90% of the bugs are fixed. What is these debug errors here? Release from paddle, can't call this state, can't flush state. Okay, so we just need to call deferred on this. I think that's maybe why those balls were frozen like that. Deferred. Freeze to false. Maybe that will fix why those balls were getting stuck in midair there. But that's going to do it for this series. I'll leave it to you guys to fix that is ceiling hit issue. And now, wait, well, hold on. Rigid body 2D freeze method not found. Call deferred, so we need to set deferred here, not call deferred. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I'll leave it to you guys to fix that ceiling hit issue. My recommendation is instead of changing the scale, we got to change the size of our colliders and the size of our sprites manually, and that'll fix that. But now when we split paddle, those are fixed. The ball is now right above. That shouldn't be happening. Now why is that happening? There's just one thing after the other after the other. It's just little bugs like that that take the longest time to fix. So this is not a big ball, so its stick offset set should not be 12. So why was its stick offset set to 12? Oh, it's because we're setting it to 8 here, and then we're going into this for loop, and then we're setting it to 12 on the first big ball, but then it's not getting set back to 8 correctly for the next for the small ball. So this needs to be else ball offset y equals negative 8.0. And we need to do the same thing here. Because this is going through a for loop, and we have this variable outside of the for loop, so it's not getting reset every time. So we need to change that per ball in the for loop. So that will definitely fix that issue there. So yeah, it's just little things like that. Like having a debug menu is super helpful. So let's create a big ball. Let's see if we can get some more balls on here. So it'd be nice to have another button to spawn like multi-balls. And that is a nasty bounce there. That is such a nasty bounce. That's really unlucky. Yeah, so this could even do with having another button here to spawn multi-balls. Magnet, magnet, magnet. Okay. And let's turn off split paddle. And okay, this one's sticking off the edge for some reason, but its offset Y is correct. So there we go. That was probably the most buggy game we've made so far. We haven't needed to make a debug menu so far, but this was a really good case for having that debug menu. So I hope you enjoyed this series. It was a lot of fun to make. Even the debugging process, for some reason I find that fun as well, believe it or not. But if you enjoyed and you made it all the way through, leave me a like, a subscribe, leave me a comment. I read all the comments, so if you're having trouble, something's not going right, let me know in a comment and I'll try to help you out. Otherwise, I'll see you on the next series. Thanks for watching.